advance. Okay, as I wait for us to find the slide advance, I guess I'll get started. First of all, Patrick, I hate to disappoint you, but the Air Force one you're going to see is a 707. It's not a 747, but it still is very special. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to my home, Seattle. It is absolutely both my privilege and pleasure to be here to share with you our view of the market today as well as tomorrow. And in fact, my presentation today, I wanted to do three things. I wanted to touch on today's aviation environment, a market that continues to grow and despite a number of challenges we have. I'd then like to share with you our current market outlook. Our current market outlook is our long-term forecast for both air travel as well as airplane demand. And then finally, very briefly, I'll touch a little bit on our product strategy and development activities and talk to you a little bit about competition as well. I hit the button once, I'll hit it again. As Patrick just discussed, it's clearly a challenging business environment today for our airline customers. In fact, 2011 is a more challenging year than any of us expected. But I want to emphasize that the world economy continues to grow. Traffic continues to grow, load factors continue to be at near record levels, yield and revenue is growing this year, and despite a number of challenges in the economy, despite high fuel prices, IATA is still forecasting that world airlines will be profitable. In fact, earn about $4 billion in profitability. Now this is well short of where we were in 2010 when we had record profitability, but again, the market continues to grow. And as a result of a better market, we're seeing our customers, your customers, focus on their future. They're investing in new technologies to reduce their cost. From a passenger perspective, they're investing in new interiors, new meals. They're upgrading lounges to enhance the passenger experience. Just to give you an example of what one airline is doing in terms of passenger experience, I wanted to share a quick video that I made at the end of last year. Welcome aboard. I'm Randy Tinseth on the very first flight of this 777-300ER for Air New Zealand. With this airplane, Air New Zealand is creating a new experience for both economy and business travelers. I'm sitting in the premium economy section of this airplane. As you can see, new LED lighting, new wide seats. It has more space, more comfort. It gives you an opportunity to be very private if you choose, or these seats allow you to turn around and enjoy a meal with a companion or maybe a conversation. And I'll tell you, I fly so much. One of the things I really love about this new airplane is its in-flight entertainment system. Not only do I have a selection of close to 100 different movies and television shows, I can actually order my beverage or my next meal right at my seat. As I've said many, many times, the 777 is truly a special airplane. And I'll tell you, what Air New Zealand has done with this airplane, with its new premium business class, its new premium economy, and an economy class that offers special features such as the Sky Couch, they're taking what this airplane can do to the next level. I hope you get a chance to fly on it soon.
Cruising at an altitude of 39,000 feet.
Now I know they call it a Sky Couch, but I think the term around the industry now is talked about cuddle class. Is that what it's called? Well, with a better market, we're seeing improvement in our business as well. Airlines are buying new airplanes. In fact, last year orders exceeded our expectations, and they're clearly exceeding our expectations again this year. And I think that this cycle is developing in a great many ways like we've seen previous cycles. We see strong demand for narrow-body airplanes, or I should say single-aisle airplanes, both last year and today, as airlines focus on at first their regional and domestic needs. And now we're really starting to see more and more interest in wide-body airplanes. And in fact, this year, so far, we sold more than 100 777 aircraft. So big investment in wide bodies, and we expect those trends to continue. So that's a brief look at the market today. Now I want to share with you our current market outlook. As I mentioned, this is our long-term forecast for both air travel as well as airplane demand. And frankly, we've been taking a long-term view of the market for a long time. Our first forecasts were actually done in the 1950s. We actually first published our forecast in 1964. So you may ask the question, why do you spend so much time and effort on a forecast? Why do you do it every year? And the fact is, this forecast is important to us, and it's important to us for a number of reasons. First and foremost, the forecast helps shape our product strategy. Second, we use the forecast in developing our long-range business plan. And then finally, we share the forecast with our supply base. We share our forecast with our customers to help in their planning process. So the better our forecast, the better our strategy. The better our forecast, the better our long-range business plan. And finally, the better our forecast, the better advice we can give our trusted partners. Now, in developing our long-term view of the market, we have to answer two fundamental questions. First and foremost, how fast will airline traffic grow? And then second, how will airlines accommodate this growth in their networks? But as you can imagine, we have to look at a number of other factors. We have to perform a number of additional analyses. Just take, for example, fuel price. As we all know, fuel price has been very challenging for our industry. And fuel price can impact our forecast in several ways. First, high fuel price, low fuel price can impact economic growth. Fuel price can impact the retirement decisions that airlines make. And then finally, as we've seen very clearly over the last few years, as fuel price has been at high levels, it's made some airplanes just frankly no longer economical. You can't make money today flying a small regional jet. Those airplanes are being pushed out of the market. What we're seeing is small regional jets being replaced by turboprops, maybe by larger regional jets. We're starting to see some upscaling as well in the single-aisle market. Another consideration that we look at every year is infrastructure. In fact, this year we did our most complete look at airport infrastructure that we've ever done. We looked at the capacity of more than 200 airports around the world. We looked at the investment that those airports are going to make over the next 20 years so we could determine where those airports will be in the year 2030. And frankly, we're concerned. Not so concerned about here in the U.S. market. Clearly, there's issues around New York City. There's issues at the end of the forecast in Atlanta and maybe a couple of airports in Canada. But we're concerned about what we see happening in Europe if investment's not made, and we're concerned about some of the airports in Asia. I guess I'll have to say, though, I have more confidence that the Asians will invest in those airports compared to what might happen in Europe. And I was just in China last week, and I did do that forecast for 5,000 new airports in China, or 5,000 new airplanes in China, a $600 billion investment. And you might not know it as we talk about the issues of airports. At this same time, the Chinese expect to open up 97 new airports by the year 2020. 97 new airports. What's the last airport that opened up in the U.S.? Denver International. When was that? Think about it. The challenge in China, as we see in terms of aviation, is other modes of transportation, such as high-speed rail. In fact, in China, by the end of next year, they'll have 13,000 kilometers of high-speed rail in place. 13,000 kilometers. This is about equal to the amount of high-speed rail in the rest of the world combined. Now, the good news is, from a manufacturer's point of view, we only see about 70 city pairs being affected in terms of traffic. We see only about 2% of domestic travel going from air to rail. But the good news is, especially in China, investment in infrastructure is important. We talked about investment in airports. Investment in rail is good because as they invest in their infrastructure, it allows their economy to grow. And when the economy grows, aviation grows. So let's get to those first two fundamental questions. The first one being about traffic growth, and then the second about network development. So you might ask the question, what drives air travel? Well, a couple of things drive air travel. In fact, about 60 to 80% of travel demand can be explained by growth in the economy, growth in global trade, as well as increases in income. There's another factor, though, that drives travel, and that's what I call value to the traveler. Okay, third time's the charm. There we go. About 20 to 40% of air travel is driven by a more competitive environment where fares go down over time, and an environment where more connectivity is provided to passengers. So the more we develop our system, the more people want to travel, the more they will travel. And in fact, when you look at air travel over the last 30 years, you'll notice that it's been very resilient. In fact, air travel has found a way to grow about 5% per year. You know, it's grown despite a number of economic cycles. It's grown despite a number of challenges we've had, because the fact is, at the end of the day, air travel grows because business grows, and air travel grows because we want to see new horizons as individuals. We want to grow personally. So as we look out the next 20 years, we expect the world economy to grow about 3.3% per year. That the number of travelers flying will grow at 4.2% per year. That airline traffic, which is the number of people flying multiplied by the distance they fly, will grow at 5.1% annually. And then finally, the cargo growth will be at 5.6% per year. So that's our look at growth. Now we have to look at network development. What we've seen very clearly over the last 20 years, as air travel grows, airlines accommodate this growth with more flights to more places rather than flying larger and larger airplanes. So think about it. What are you, the airlines, doing? Well, what you're doing is, in a more competitive environment, you're really focusing on the wants, the needs, and the desires of your passengers. What do your passengers want? They want more frequent, nonstop service. What are you doing? You're providing exactly that type of service. Now, from a forecasting perspective, this is important because we expect this trend to continue. From a product strategy perspective, this is why we're bringing the 787 to the marketplace. So now that we've looked at growth and we've looked at network development, I can share you our forecast. So over the next 20 years, I should say, we expect a total demand for 33,500 new aircraft valued at $2 trillion US. I'll say that one more time. 33,500 aircraft valued at $4 trillion. Now, the largest market will be for single-aisle airplanes, those aircraft that carry between about 90, 220 passengers. You'll see about almost 24,000 aircraft, almost $2 trillion US. This is the market for today's 737 as well as the Airbus A320 families. And of course, this is a market where we'll need to see new competition over the next few years. The second largest market is for twin-aisle airplanes, those aircraft that carry between 200 and 400 passengers. This is the market for today's 767 and 777, and for later this month for the Boeing 787. Now, the final segment that we choose to compete in is the large airplane market. That's for all airplanes over 400 seats. This is the market for the 747-8, 747-8 freighter, as well as the A380. You notice the market is relatively small in terms of units, only about 820 aircraft. But the fact is, it's large in terms of investment at $270 billion US, and that's why we're investing in the 747. In terms of fleet development over the next 20 years, what does that mean? That means, as a result of this demand, we see the world's fleet doubling from about 19,500 airplanes to close to 40,000 aircraft. Now, as you can see, a majority of the demand, 60% of the demand, will be needed for growth in the market. The world's fastest growing markets are in China and India, Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and Latin America. A substantial demand for replacement, 40% replacement. That's about 2 to 2.5% of the market will be replaced each and every year. The largest replacement markets are here in the United States, in Europe, as well as Russia. A couple of other comments on the forecast. First, included in that 33,500 aircraft, 970 freighters. Second, think about this. About 24% of this demand is already in the backlog of the manufacturers. So we're well on our way to making this forecast a reality. One of the things, first of all, beautiful slide. Look at how hard we work to make sure that the color of the bars match the color of the stripes on the bags. Now, I know Bob is here from Airbus. This is marketing. But the point I want to make, as you look at the world economy over the next 20 years, as I mentioned, it will grow about 3.3% per year. If you look under that gray bar, you see the world's large mature economies will grow at slower rates. If you look above the bar, you see the developing and emerging economies of the world. So the growth you see in these emerging and developing economies will truly change our industry moving forward. In fact, last year, you could say, was a watershed year. For the very first time, the North American market was no longer the world's largest travel market. It was surpassed for the first time by travel within Asia. If you go out the next 20 years, that market will grow at 7% per year. There's another interesting thing that you can take away from this chart. Look at domestic China travel. Look at travel within Europe and travel within the United States or North America. By the end of the forecast period, those markets will all be about the same size. And think about one more thing. At the end of the forecast, almost 50% of all travel will in some way touch Asia. So the center of aviation has moved from the United States and Europe to Asia. There's no question about it. So in terms of regional demand, as we look forward, just to put this in perspective. Think about it, 20 years ago, 72% of all travelers traveled on either an airline domiciled in North America or Europe. At the end of last year, 55%. At the end of the forecast period, it will be down to about 40%. So think about how the way this market is changing. So as we look at demand by region of the world, clearly the Asia-Pacific market will be the largest market, about 35% of all demand. Over 40% of that demand is in China alone. This will be followed by demand in Europe, then North America, Latin America, the Middle East, and then finally Africa and Russia. You know, the two markets, though, that have changed the most over the last few years that I've done this are the Middle East and Latin America. Think about it. In 2009, at the bottom of this economic cycle, at the bottom of this aviation cycle, there were only two markets that grew. Those two markets. Anybody guess which one was profitable, which one wasn't? The only profitable region in the world in 2009 was Latin America. I bet most people wouldn't have thought about that. So one of the questions I often receive, now this is a little bit complicated chart, but one of the questions I often receive, you know, Boeing, you talk about all these big numbers. Are they accurate? So I went back to the year 2000 and I looked at our forecast in the year 2000, and I picked the year 2000 for a couple of reasons, but one is I had the data. And the second is, it was the year that Airbus launched the A380, so fundamentally both Boeing and Airbus have a product in each market segment. So as you can see, in the year 2000, over the next 20 years, we forecast 22,315 units. So the question is, how are we doing? So what I did was I looked at all the airplanes that have delivered since then and added to that the number of airplanes that are on order to get an idea of what's going on. And the fact is, we think by the end of the 20-year period, the airlines will actually take probably somewhere between 23 and 24,000 airplanes. So we've done a pretty good job. What we've done is we've slightly overestimated demand for both regional jets and big airplanes, pretty much spot on in twin aisles, and we underestimated demand for single aisle airplanes. You know, frankly, 10 years ago, we really didn't truly appreciate what's going on with low-cost carriers. We didn't truly appreciate what was going on in terms of the emerging and developing economies. And then finally, we really didn't see all this replacement demand. That's what's really been driving that marketplace. So I just wanted to end with a brief look at our strategy and development activities. You know, I talked about things that shaped our forecast. Well, three things really shape our product strategy. First and foremost, it's the forecast we just shared. Second, our strategy is shaped by available technologies. And then finally, and most importantly, our strategy is shaped by the wants, needs, and desires of our customers, the airlines. And at the end of the day, the strategy is pretty simple. It's really to provide the best airplanes to our customers, aircraft that provide more value than the competition. And what's value? Well, I think value to airlines is reliability and performance. It's efficiency, it's operating cost, and it's a superior passenger experience. Let me share with you what we're doing in terms of passenger experience on the 787. There is music to this. airplane that clearly is going to look different to passengers, but I also wanted to add that this is an airplane at the end of a long flight, you'll feel different. What are we doing? Well, number one, it's going to have cleaner air. Number two is we're lowering the cabin altitude, so actually in the cabin you'll have more oxygen. And then finally, we have a new technology on this airplane that will smooth the ride and help counter turbulence. So again, a new architecture, an airplane that will look different, and also something where we guarantee at the end of the flight you feel a little different. The other thing I wanted to talk about 787, what we've done here is we're really taking the philosophy of the 787, the architecture of the 787, and some of the technologies of the 787. We're applying them to the 737, the 747-8, and finally incorporating some of those back into the 777. Now, I talked about airplanes for a moment, but I also wanted to add at Boeing, we're not just airplanes, we're also about services. In fact, over the last 10 years, we've worked very hard to grow our services portfolio, to better integrate that portfolio, so we can help our customers become more efficient in both their flight and fleet operations. And our services strategy, frankly, has worked quite well. Today, at Boeing Commercial Airplanes, services account for about 15% of our revenue. That means last year in services, we had greater revenue than Airbus did with an A380. So think about that. Second, as you can see from this chart, it's a strategy that works. I mean, today we have a backlog of over 3,400 aircraft, $262 billion, and this backlog is well balanced by airplane type, airline business model, and finally by region of the world. Now, before I wrap up, just a couple of comments on a couple of airplanes, because last month was a big month for us at Boeing. First, we completed, finally, flight testing of the 747-8 freighter. The airplane's now been certified, the production system has been certified. We're going to make our first 2 deliveries to Cargolux later this month. And then finally, we completed the flight testing of the 787 with Rolls-Royce engines. That airplane's now been certified. Its production system has been certified, and we'll be making our first delivery to ANA on the 26th of September. And then finally, 2 weeks ago, we launched a new airplane at Boeing, the 737 MAX. This is the 737 with the new engine provided by CFM. And finally, the world is changing. The world has changed. I talked about Boeing and what we're doing. I just want to emphasize that the world is changing in terms of competition. This is no longer a duopoly. As you can see from the bottom of this picture, we see competition from the Japanese coming, from the Chinese coming, from the Brazilians, from the Canadians, as well as the Russians. And as we look to the future, I mean, we're going to be pushed very, very hard in terms of this competition. And frankly, competition is good. You know what competition is like. We know what it's like. New competition brings new ideas. New competition brings new technologies. New competition makes us all better. And fundamentally, what we have to do to remain competitive is, number one, continue to focus on our customers. Second, to make sure we have the right strategy. Third, to invest in new products and new technologies. And finally, to find ways to make airplanes at a lower and lower cost over time. So in summary, as we talked about earlier, today is a challenging market, but the market continues to grow. I shared with you our long-term forecast. And the thing I want to emphasize is that we're in a business that has grown and will continue to grow. And then finally, at Boeing, we're investing. We're investing in new products. We're investing into our existing products to remain competitive, to provide the best to our customers. Here's my plug for my blog. Actually, last month, 396,000 hits. So we're really coming into this information age. And then I've got this really cool video that I want to close with. And, you know, this is our industry in a few seconds. This is our flights in a 24-hour period. But think about what we do. It's important. It is absolutely critical. Each and every day, the world's fleet of about 19,500 airplanes takes to the air. Those airplanes are carrying cargo. Those airplanes are connecting countries. They're connecting economies. But most importantly, they're connecting people. Think about it. Aviation is and will continue to be an integral part of both the social and economic fabric of the world. Remember, what we do is important. We support about 8% of world GDP, and directly and indirectly, we support about 32 million jobs. So thank you very much, and I'd be glad to answer a question or two. watch this all day. Yes?
Mary Kirby, Flight International. When is in-flight connectivity coming to the 787?
So the question is, when will in-flight connectivity come to the 787? Well, I think that's up to our customers. Right now, we do not provide Boeing in-flight entertainment, or I should say in-flight internet. Is that what you're looking for? But clearly there's many third parties out there that we're looking to support in the future and try to figure out the direction that we'll head.
When are you going to offer it line fit?
Pardon me?
When are you going to offer internet line fit on the 787?
It's something we haven't committed to at this point. What we're looking at. Anything else? Yes.
Hello. Hi, good morning. Will Horton from Apex. Could you talk about the new 777 you're working on?
Can I talk about the new 777 we're working on? Well, I can start here. Talk a little bit about product strategy. First and foremost, our focus at Boeing is to make sure we make those first deliveries of the 747-8 as well as the 787. We're now committed to the 737 MAX that will enter service in about the year 2017. And then we're looking at our options beyond that in terms of what we might want to do in terms of wide-body aircraft. One of the things we're looking at is to extend the 787 line with an airplane we call the 787-10. This is an aircraft that would carry about 40 more passengers than the 787-9, would fly somewhere between 6,800 nautical miles and 7,000 nautical miles. So that's one option. And the other option we're looking at is at what is the right time and what we'll do with the 777 family. More than likely we're looking at a derivative of that aircraft, one that will be more efficient. One of the great things about the 777 is it is, without question, the world's premier airplane today. It will continue to be the world's premier airplane. And think about it, we sold 100 so far this year. So it's at the early point in its life cycle. We're going to look about what we have to do with that airplane in the future, but we have no plans at this point we're not committed to changes.